Good morning, everyone. Once again, I want to update you for just joining our webinar for today. And I want to take this opportunity to let you know that we really value all the school owners and our portfolio. We value each and every person who has chosen to partner with Ed Partners Africa in ensuring we are promoting quality education under SDG 4. Therefore, today it's a very interesting day, and today our webinar is also a very interesting one because we're discussing on a matter that is very crucial to us as a country, to us also as school owners, and even to us as the executors of programs or even loan services that support schools and support basically that is affordable private schools. Therefore, today we'll be discussing about data protection. And when it comes to matter data protection to schools, is that we realize that we're not only dealing with our employees' data, but we are also dealing with the data of the minors, which is very critical in this country in as far as protecting the privacy of the minor is concerned. And upon recently, we have various institutions, including schools that have been fined even to the tunes of 4 million because of the breach of data of the minor. Therefore, we saw it critical as a company or a financial institution that is supporting schools or even supporting affordable education and even affordable private school to just ensure that we build capacity to our school owners or even capacity in ensuring that the schools that we're supporting under our portfolio and even any other school within the education community that this is something that is critical, one. Secondly, that are aware that they need to call data protection. So there are two stages. You can either register as a data controller or a data processor. And therefore, today we have a guest speaker by the name Agnes Kionga. Agnes Kionga is an advocate of the High Court and a specialist when it comes to matters data protection, for that is SME and even school directors or even schools themselves. He's also directors and co-founders of NKM Advocate. And I must say that Agnes also has vast knowledge when it comes to other legal matters. Therefore, as a school owner, we can always have an opportunity to consult her in any matters to do with legal, in any matters to do with data protection, so that we can ensure that our schools are complying in matters legal. Over and above, the matter that we are trying to focus on today is just to ensure that you are running your business in line with what is required in as far as legal legal matters is concerned. And of course, in this case, now we're talking about data protection. So in this case, we have three categories. Of course, we have the minor, we have the employees within our schools, and we also have other critical information that surrounds these various stakeholders that are parties to what we call data protection. So without any further ado, I want to take this opportunity to welcome Agnes, Advocate Agnes Kionga, to just take us through data protection for schools. And just to let you know, for those who are joining, that this webinar is being recorded. Just for your information, that's one. And secondly, the same will be shared to our YouTubers and any other of the social media platforms so that you can always access and refer to whenever we want. So without any further ado, Agnes Kionga, karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Betty. And sorry, I wanted to... Thank you so much, Betty, and welcome to all our attendees today. And without much further ado, let's proceed, because I know we have a few minutes and data protection is vast. But today we are confining ourselves to schools. And I'm seeking guidance, Betty, on how you handle questions. Is it after the presentation, or will it be, if we are going through the slide, if someone has a question, you can answer as we go along?
No, we can do it after the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. So if you have any questions, there is a question and Q&A tab there. You can be putting your questions there, or sometimes I think it's through the Q&A and the chat.
Yes, they can use the Q&A or even the chat itself.
Okay.
But the same will be answered after the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. Now let's delve into the data protection for schools. I know you've all seen the recent was it was Roma school that was fined 4.5 million. That's a school, I think that's the one that has had the biggest fine so far.
Yes.
That makes you understand how information for minors are very sensitive. So let's go through. I'll go through my slide. Okay. Let me go to the next. This is about us. We are a law firm that was founded in 2019, and we have, as Betty has made you know, that we are diverse in various specific areas of law. We are in many areas, but that one will delve in at the end of this slide. And let's start the journey data protection. It was put in place in 2019. This is the journey. This is the journey of how we came into privacy, data privacy in Kenya. In 2016, there was a GDPR that was formulated in Europe. And in 2019, this GDPR came into effect. And for purposes of us being able, because we are an international, Kenya is international, we had to put in a privacy also, a privacy act, so that we can be able to do business worldwide. So you were able to enact ours, the DPA, that is the Data Protection Act, in 2019. And in 2020, our first commissioner, who is still in place, that is Immaculate Kasait, is still in office today, was appointed. And 2021, we came up with the draft regulation. But the Data Protection Act in 2018 became effective then. I know then we were not hearing so much about privacy until the enforcement notices started being issued. And the most recent one against that school is, I think, what Enslans, that is what Athika wrote, that is what made everyone aware that the commissioner means business. So what is contained in the Data Protection Act? There is a data subject. Data subject is anyone who can be identified or already identified. It's an identifiable person who has an ID, a number, location, or an online identifier, or any form of identifier. For our minors, they have birth certificates. And in schools, we use those birth certificates for NEMIS numbers, to obtain NEMIS numbers from the government. So even the NEMIS number itself is a sensitive data for the minor. So anything that can identify a person, is it physical appearance, your face, anything that is identified, it has to be a person, it cannot be a thing. So it has to be something that can be identified. So, and that is a data subject. So in the course of the training, we'll be referring to the data subject. When you say a data subject, that is what it means. Myself, I'm a data subject, Betty, and any trainee that is here is a data subject. As Betty has informed you now, before even we start the training, that you're being recorded. So anything that is said, and she has also shared that it will be shared online or on Facebook. So in case you have an objection, you let Betty know later that I'm not comfortable my data being shared outside there. So that is part of your data. It's a data subject. If you can be identified, then you will go to the rights and the principles later. You'll be able to realize why Betty has told you that your information, whatever you're doing right now, is being recorded. And so we go to personal data. That is information relating to an identifier. That one we've already discussed. And then when it comes to sensitive personal data, that is like someone's health. Sometimes a student can come, or a parent will come to you and tell you, my child has this and this, so there's a certain kind of meal she cannot take. That is now sensitive data, because it comes to the person's health. It's person's health, your biometric, like the fingerprints, and then probably your eyes, your iris. You remember the way WorldCoin came and started taking people's data? That was, and they were using their iris to identify people. And we were never told what that data will be used for later. We'll go into that later. I want to show you the difference between personal data and personal data. Sensitive personal data goes far and beyond your name and your maybe probably birth certificate, into your health. Do you have a specific health issue? Into your your fingerprints, your biometrics, your race, your religion, your gender. You know, nowadays gender has been, we've started classifying gender as maybe female, male, or other, depending on what you identify, how you identify yourself as. Data processing. Now, these are the operations when you want to enroll a student in your school. Like when I went to enroll my daughter, there's information they were requesting for. What's the name of this student? How many years? How old is she? Can you give us a copy of her birth certificate so that we can be able? These are some of the information that the school will get. That is legitimate information. You're obtaining it. For you to be able to enroll this student, you need this kind of data. And maybe for you need this kind of data, you'll need their name and their ID. You'll need their bank account for processing payroll, for payroll purposes. These are still, this is now data processing. The information you require for you to be able to do a specific thing for that party. And there is data protection impact assessment. It's depending on the kind of data you're taking, you need to weigh the risks. What is the risks of this data? If I'm starting this project with this kind of data, if it's these are students, we have all this data and we need to start a specific project for students. Maybe you're going for drama festivals and not all students will go, and it's a project you're undertaking. There is information you'll need to share with other parties for them to be able to participate in those specific activities. There is a risk involved there because you're sharing this data with parties. What kind of risk? Are you willing to take this risk? That is why you need to undertake an impact assessment to know the kind of risk it will entail, and you weigh your risk. Is this risk worth taking, or is it not? If it's worth taking, then if these risks are still there, because risks will be there in life, what percentage of this risk, and how can we mitigate if the risk itself, if this data leaks or breaches, what are our mitigating factors? What do we need to do? That's why you need to carry a DPIA, a data protection impact assessment, before any project or before you start anything involving someone's data. Is it your staff or your employees, your directors, your school heads, your management? What are the risks of this information or the project we're undertaking, depending on the data that we have? Okay, let me go to the next slide. So every data subject, they have rights. Minors have rights. You as a data subject, as an adult, you have rights. And the first right is right to information. That one, Betty has portrayed it very well when she was able to inform you. You have a right to be informed that anything we are doing is being recorded, or anything that the information that we are taking, or the photos that we are taking, you'll inform your students when there is a meeting or when there is a specific activity. You have a right to inform the guardians of these minors that we'll take photos of your children, and we need consent we'll deal with consent later, but you have a right to inform them. There's a specific project that we are doing. We are going to such and such a place. They have a right to that information. Anything that is being taken, any data that when parents are coming in for meetings, sometimes you have registers. You sign the parent's name, the minor's name, and which grade this minor is in, and you sign your time in and time out. So this is you need to inform them the right you're taking, that there's a register at the door, that when you're coming in as a parent and why you're writing your name and the name of your child. That is one right that you need to, they have that right to information. You need to tell them. Access to personal data. Is there any data you hold for a minor or for a parent, for an employee? They have a right to access that information. If they request for that information, you need to give them. It's information involving their data. You have their name or what you have regarding them. Your employees, you have their files. If an employee wants to know the data you hold in their file about them, they can request, and they need that access. There are forms for that, for requesting that data. So they also have a right to object to any processing. If a parent wants you to process their data, or let's say example, they are logging in, they're coming in for a meeting, and you need that information, and the parent says, I'm not willing to give this information to you. I am objecting to you processing this kind of information, or you have informed me, yes, but I'm not okay with you processing this data further from what you've taken. Now you have to show why you have, they can object, but you also have a way, you have to tell them, we are collecting this information because this is the information we need for us to go further with what you want to do. Let's say a teacher comes to your school and there's an interview. There's a form they fill, and then when they're during the interview, they tell you, but I'm not willing for you to process my information, my name, my ID. But you can tell them, for us to be able to employ you, we need this information for you to get a job at this place. So if you're objecting to your data being processed, employ you. That one, you have a right to respond. If they object, you have a right to tell them, this is where you're collecting this data. And if you object to it, then we cannot be able to give you certain services. Even a parent, you can also tell a parent that if you're not willing to give us information regarding your child, their name, or if you're not willing to produce their birth certificate, a copy of it, this is a requirement by the government, and we cannot proceed with you admitting your child in our school, because at a certain point, this child will need identity from the government, and that is the NEMIS number. So if you cannot do that, your child will not be able to access NEC examinations, will not be able to enjoy certain services from the government, even from the school, because there is information that you have objected to us processing. So they also have a right to ask for correction of their personal data. A right to correction is that, like say, my name is Agnes Nyawira Kionga, and then you have written Agnes Nyambura Kionga. I have a right to ask for you to correct that data. And the way I can ask you to correct it is if I have a data that you hold, and I see there is this information this is not my full name. There is a mistake with my name. So I have a right to ask you to correct that data that you have provided, because it is misleading and it is false. That is not my data. I have a right to tell you, correct my data to this and this. Or if I was, or maybe previously, the birth certificate I gave you, there was no father's name. And then I was able to correct, and the father's name was put in the birth certificate. I'll come and tell you, the previous data I gave you, there is something that I need you to add. I need to exchange the birth certificate. The birth certificate I gave had no father's name, but now there's a father's name in the birth certificate. We were able to get help from the government, and the father's name is included in the birth certificate. So I have a right to ask you to correct that data. And I also have to delete any data or misleading data that you have about me or my minor in the school, or even as your staff or an employee. I get access to my personal data because I have a right to access. Then I find the data you hold, some of it is not relevant to any of the school activity. I can ask you, please delete this data. If you cannot explain to me where you need it, then there's no need of you having it. And probably it's misleading. Maybe I was not married. I didn't have, my married name is Mbogwa. Mbogwa was not there. It was just Kionga. I need this data deleted, and you delete what you have or add. It's now Agnes Nyawira Kionga Mbogwa. I have a right to tell you specifically, maybe delete Kionga completely and put Mbogwa, because there has been some. Let's now go to their principles. Those are rights. I was telling another training somewhere, the way you were able to cram some of the issues. There are some mottos that you have in school that work hard, and there's those principles that we have. There's the motto the school has. This and this school, our motto is work hard. These are some of the things that now you need to, as director, that needs to be at your fingerprint. The rights, these rights of these people, and what are the principles? It needs to be at your fingerprint. Any point you're processing data, you they have a right to information, access to deletion, and even asking for any data that you hold against that is misleading to be corrected. These are some of the rights. Anytime you put your pen or your computer in place to start processing this data, you have privacy in mind. That is one of the principles of the first principle of the Data Protection Act. That is 75. When you process, have privacy in mind. Is this information that I hold for these students is private. These photos that we hold for these students are private. We have no right to maybe put them on our websites unless we have consent. They are private until we are given probably permission maybe to advertise our school in them, or their billboards. I see billboards all over when I'm of schools advertising them, and their photos of minors. Those guardians of those minors, were they able to give you permission to put those billboards in place with the faces of their children? Were they able to sign somewhere that it is okay, you can post, your websites can be splashed all over with the photos of my child? Any data that is processed is private, and you need to bear that in mind. That is the first principle of the DPA. And fairness and lawful. Is the information you're collecting fair to the people you're collecting information from? Is it transparent? Let's go to maybe probably schools in there's information in schools. Let's say in a country, some schools, some parents are still illiterate, but you still request this data from them. And probably, are you transparent to these parents why you need this data and why you need to process it? These parents are not informed. How are you as a school trying to inform them and give them this information that they require to be able to be compliant with the Act? And what is the purpose of collecting this data? Have you specified the specific purpose of processing this data? Let's say, for example, you're collecting data to go to a specific area. Like say my daughter is going maybe to Mombasa for a scouts, whatever, for a scouts training. Information, we need 1, 2, 3. Are there any allergies that she has? Does she have an issue with climate change? Will there be an issue if 1, 2, or 3 is done? We are going to do 1, 2, 3. And we need this specific data regarding her health because probably of climate change. So for us to know what we'll do if this weather affects her, because she has never been outside Nairobi. So if this information, I've been told the specific purpose. If thereafter the school uses that information I gave them, I was giving this information for purposes of her traveling. Then they use it for the purpose of maybe allocating a different class or segregating to a specific duty. You see, now the purpose has changed. I need to be informed. If the purpose changes, the information I gave, they need to ask to tell me the purpose for which we requested the other data. We are changing it to the information you gave us. Yes, we used it for the purpose it was supposed to have, but now we also want to use it for this other specific purpose, maybe for diet purposes, but the information I gave was for purposes of traveling, but they are using it now for purposes of her diet. That is not right. The information needs to be used for the specific purpose for which I gave that information for. And if they need to change the purpose, they need to inform me and I need to consent for that information to be used for another purpose. That is why purpose is every time you're collecting data, you can now probably put all purposes. You may need this data for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You at least use that you can collect the data from minors, or from parents, or from your employees, for you not to be every other time that you need to use for a specific purpose. In order for you not to go back to the parents, you know all the purposes you'll need data for. So you put them in one document, you tell them this is the information you'll need for these purposes. So kindly give us this information, but you'll know it will be used for all these purposes. Because every time you change the purpose of data, you need to have the parents informed or even your staff informed. The purpose remains specific. I'm collecting this data for a specific purpose changes, then the data subjects needs to be informed. Adequacy. Am I collecting what I need? Just what I need. It is called minimization. The principle of minimization. Am I collecting this data just the data I need. If I just need the name, the ID, and the birth certificate, or the birth certificate number, a copy of the birth certificate, then why am I asking about the health of this student or the staff? Just, it is called data minimization. Am I just collecting the bare minimum of what I need for me to do my processing? You just collect the data that you need for a specific purpose, and that is adequate. You minimize your data. You don't collect all this. What is your religion? What is your race? If it's you ask, is race really important in the form that I'm filling? Is in the data that I'm collecting, do I really need to know the race of this student? Do I need to know the religion? Probably their background, their religion background. Sometimes the religion is important because of maybe the PPIs that take place in school, and specific Muslims go for prayer in a specific, those specific schools that are religious, maybe it's a Christian school or a Muslim school, that religion might be important. But let's say it's just a school, a private school that has no specific religion. You take students of all religion. Do you need to specify there? Do you need that information of religion? Do you need that space of ticking the box of tribe? Is that important? And how is it important? So you just collect. You go through your forms of the forms you use to collect data, and you audit those forms. You tick that, is this information important? Is the name really important for me to get this data? Can the purpose that I want this data for, if I don't have this race, can I still fulfill this purpose? That is how you tick your box. That's how you audit. If this information is missing from this form, can this data still work? Can I still process this data? Can I still meet the purpose that I'm collecting? To a valid explanation client, that is said why you're collecting data on their family or their private affairs. Like, let's say your employees, you've given them medical cards, and their medical cards covers their kids and covers probably the spouse. You will need the information of the spouse, and you'll also need the information of the children. So you need to explain to them why you need this data, because this data, their children will not be covered by the insurance. So if they are sick, their children will not be able to get the proper health care that they need. Is the data you are collecting accurate? You need to be very specific. It needs to be very accurate and up to date. In case there is data that is not up to date, let's say for your staff, the staff you took was not married at the point of employing them, but now they are married and they have children. Information that you need probably for you to be able to help your staff better. Can you make it accurate or update it to the current situation, to fit the current purpose of the data that you need? There is data retention. And maybe students who left years ago, do you need to keep that data? Do you need still to retain it? That is intention. You ask yourself, and if this data is 15 years old or 20 years old, if I keep it, can I anonymize it? Anonymization is you put a data in a way that any person coming across that data will not be able to identify a person. Like, let's say my daughter left school in maybe 2002, and the school she went to, the data is still there. Or I left that school in 2002, but they still have my data, but they have put it in a way, in form of words, in form of a number. Instead of Agnes Nyawira Kionga, they have put 004. Any post that data years later will not be able to know what 004 means. So my data is anonymized in a way that the only person who will be able to identify that data is as data is processed. So they will be able to know, if I want my file, I just give my name and they will know that is file 004. That's my identity 004. They will be able to retrieve that data. So if you keep data for long, that is no longer probably required, or for me in future, but not now, can it be anonymized in a way that any other person coming across that data, they will not be able to identify that person, the data subject. Are you transferring data outside Kenya as a is a process for that. They're transferring this data to. Does it adhere to the data protection rules, not of our country, but in their country? Do they have privacy laws in place? Do they have, like now in Europe, now there's the GDPR, they are using it. So for you need to show the commissioner that we are sharing this data outside the country, but this country we are sharing, they have their laws in place for privacy. So we are sure that the data we are sharing with them will be protected. We know about that case study of Roma School, and you see that fine was very punitive. And there's something I need to tell you about these fines. This is just from the commissioner. So the parent whose minor's data photo was shared can also move court to give damages. So apart from you giving the commissioner, the Office of the Data Protection Office, the 4.5, you also, a parent can also pursue further for damages, and you don't know the amount the damages you run into. So it's not only the fine by the ODPC, it's also the damages that you pay the parent. So you'll find probably the school might have even paid more than 4.5, because if the parent pursued further and had a case, the court would give damages to a specified amount. This was the kind of damage. If they're able to show by sharing that photo, we were running away from an abusive parent, the other side, and now the parent has been able to know where they serve and has been able to locate us, and we are now in danger because of 1, 2, 3. You see, now the school will face these damages of you finding this parent another place to hide, or even another school, and you pay school fees for that specific period the way they had paid for this one. You see, now it becomes very punitive for the school. And with the current economic times, I don't damages that occurred as a result of that photo being shared, then the school will be liable also to pay the parent damaging fines to the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. The fines that ODPC can pay, the amount of the limitation, you pay 5 million. You cannot pay more than 5 million. So in case of there is a data breach, the commissioner can only fine you up to 5 million, but cannot go beyond 5 million. But a parent can go and seek damages beyond that amount, because now that's a different case. So what type of data do we as schools collect? There is data for pupils and parents. We have data for actors and for volunteers that come into our school. We have the name, addresses, and contact details of all these, of the parents, of the staff, and the governors. You have their date of birth, their gender, you have their bank details, you have the maybe details of their next of kin, you have their photos, and you have even photos of parents and directors. And the special category of data that you collect, there is ethnicity and religion. There is data on health for parents and for pupils. There is data for trade union and membership. If your staff are in a union, there is data that you need to know whether they're in a specific union. That is data that is in custody of them. So you need to show there is a list for you processing any data that you collect. Are you collecting it because of legitimate interest, where people would expect you to collect this data? Legitimate interest would be, if you don't give me data for your child, then we are not able to admit this child in this school. We need of information, because this will help this will enable us to process the information of your child. We are able to share this with the government. And also for legal obligation, this is now for sharing with the government because of the NEMIS number. You provide education to the school. There's also public interest, where it is in the wider interest, maybe to share. Maybe there's a child missing. We've seen in our WhatsApp that we are being told this child is shared from one WhatsApp to another. That is because there is an interest of you finding this minor. That one you can, there is a defense for that. We were able to share this data because this minor went missing, and we had to circulate this photo all over because we need to find this child. you are given consent. It's another legal basis for processing information. Consent was given on the basis of you can share in our school's website, you can share in our billboards. That consent was truly well obtained. There is a contract in place. Maybe you provide a contract to a member of staff. And we are saying that if any legal basis for processing of data, you need to have it recorded. Recorded is in writing, or you have to have it recorded. This person gave consent. We are processing this data for a specific person. So you need to record the record of the processing activity. How was it processed? And yes, and did we obtain the right? Did we go through the right measures? Are we compliant with the Data Protection Act? So we were talking about consent. Consent is gathered where no other existing legal basis exist for processing of personal data. You want to market your school. That is why you are saying you're marketing the other forms you market your schools. Right now, from the schools my children go to, we are getting brochures with so many students' photos of the activity, because they are closing next week. There are so many activities that will take place in that month of November and beginning of December. And there are photos of so many students in those brochures. And those brochures go to many parents. And even you're told to share with your neighbors, even if they don't go to that school, so that they can bring their kids for this, for the after school activities, after closing the school activities. If my child's photo is there, was I requested to consent that my child's photo will be in these brochures? Or if I find the face of my child, did I give consent of my child to be used as a marketing tool? You see, when you're marketing, the school is gaining. Was I paid for that? Did I give consent, although I was not being paid? So consent is really important. It needs to be given freely, and it can be easily withdrawn. I can later change my mind. Although I gave you consent, please pull down that photo of my child in your social media sites. I no longer want her to be there. So pull it down. Was it clear? I gave it, and you gave me information. This is what you're going to do. You remember our right to information? You gave me that information. And you remember the other right? You told me the purpose, the other principle, the principles of the DPA. You gave me the purpose. You gave me clearly, and there's a form you told me, you were able to explain to me, and I was able to sign. Would I later go and say, no, they were not very clear of what they were telling me, so me, I didn't understand. So even when I was giving consent, I was not sure of what they were. I was consenting because you have really given them information and you have told them the purpose, and they have consented. Was it specific? It was for a very specific, well explained. So, and I need to give my consent freely. You don't force me to give consent. You don't tell me, if you don't give us consent, then your child cannot come to school next term. That is not, that is coercion. So I need to give my consent freely without threats or coercion, or I will not benefit for a specific need because I've refused to give you consent. And is it documented? Consent, something written is better than something that you gave us orally. That the verbal consent was enough. Verbal consent is not enough, because the data subject can later deny that I never gave you that verbal consent. Then if I want to withdraw that information, that consent I gave you, I'll just tell you in writing, please withdraw. If it's a photo or any information that any consent I gave you regarding 1, 2, 3, then I want it withdrawn. So in DPA as schools, we are confining ourselves to schools, because I know DPA is very wide. So in the responsibilities of staff, anytime that data is being collected, you need to remember that you're responsible for keeping the data you're processing safe. Are you leaving all data, those files? If you're in HR, are you leaving your files all over that any Tom, Dick, and Harry can access that information? There are members of staff that do not need to go through your HR information or your payroll, because they'll go and advertise it. When you're sharing payslips, because nowadays it's digital, when you're sending someone, do you copy? You see the way you can send to, and then you copy, then you blind copy. Are you copying to everyone, so everyone will be able to see that my payslip, and I can also be able to see data of someone else in the copy area of the email? So remember, you're responsible for keeping that data safe. Make yourself aware of the categories of data you process and how you are keeping it secure. Now, this, you need to do an audit in your school. How are we processing our data, and how are we ensuring this data is safe? And you need to know which data requires consent, and confirm it has been gathered. Does this data, maybe my child is going for a trip, the excursions they go to, we have to be informed. Did I give that consent? Like, say my kids, sometimes the school says we are going for swimming on this and this date. Maybe my child does not like water or fears water, or I have other ways of ensuring my child goes for swimming. I think these are some of the clubs that there's swimming, there are other clubs. The clubs that my child finds themselves in, have I given consent? Is there either a digital form? Because I know we fill a digital form to say the clubs that we want our children to be in this term. Have I consented to them being taken? Maybe sometimes you take them to somewhere they're not supposed to go. I have not consented. So it needs to be gathered and it needs to be filed. This is information regarding the daughter of Agnes Nyawera. This is the consent Agnes gave. So that consent needs to be well kept. Comply with the school data protection policy. Does your school have a data protection policy in the first place? And ask if in that policy something is unclear, the staff needs to ask, what does this, when it comes to this policy, what does it mean about this data? The staff needs to be aware of what this policy actually says. You take care when using emails. This is what I was saying. Sometimes you don't need to, when you're giving parents information, I know there's a WhatsApp group, at least parents there have written the names they want to identify themselves with. And probably there's other information that will be shared through emails. Are you copying everyone there? So I can see there's a parent called Agnes, there's another parent called Joshua, there's another, am I able to see other parents' information? Because if I need to send them an email, I'll just go to the school's email and I just copy that email, then I send this parent's email. So instead of you having to copy, you need to blind copy. So in an email, there is to their specific subject, then there is CC, then there is PCC. I need to take care that if it's parents and the parents are diverse and they are different. So I will blind copy, but they still find all these emails. So they will not be able to see information regarding other parents or their names or their emails. So because I can, as a data subject, I can just take that information that I have seen from the CC copy, then I'll be able to send these parents email, probably marketing myself. And I'm a parent and I'm marketing myself to other parents, but the school is the one that gave me that information to be able to copy it and maybe start marketing my business to other parents. The don'ts of staff. Use photos. You don't use photos unless consent is given. And we said consent should be recorded. You do not give information about parents or pupils to others unless you have a legal basis. We saw the legal basis of collecting that data. You do not access personal information on phones or laptops unless they are appropriately protected. As staff, you have maybe your finance or your HR, and even as a teacher or even as directors, do you have the proper encryptions or passwords in place that if I want to access specific information or if I leave my desk, I can just lock it and leave, and I'll not leave my laptop exposed to other people who are not party to that data to be able to access it. Do you share passwords? You cannot share passwords when it comes to personal information. Do you ignore data breach? If data is lost, you need to report to the office immediately. I know offices have different, maybe if this happens, you go to your senior teacher, then after the senior teacher, it's you go to the deputy. If the deputy cannot sort it, you go to the principal. If the principal cannot sort it, there is a PTA in place. If those cannot be able to sort it, there is a director and management of the school in place. So what is your breach reporting criteria? But you need to know when you're reporting breach, from the point you noted breach, you have 72 report it to the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. So some bureaucracies and protocols in place may be too slow. By the time the information reaches the right party, 72 hours have passed. And for you to report breach, it needs to be very, it can be, not every breach is reported to the OBPC. You need to, the way you say there is a DPI, you need to measure the kind of risk this data, if this data was breached and it was leaked to the public, what kind of risk does it pose to the data subjects that whose data was exposed? If it's something that can be contained in-house, you contain it and you document it. You need to document, but you need to document it every time something happens and you're able to contain it without it affecting the data subject or without informing the ODPC. You need to document it, because a time will come when probably there is a breach of that is even worse, that needs to now to be reported even to the data subject. So when you're reporting breach, you need to report it within 72 hours. And also the data subject needs to be aware. The data subject, like a parent, let's say my data has been breached and I hear it from another parent. I can report the school to the ODPC because my data was breached. You never informed me. I'm getting information from third parties. So if you know this data will somehow get into the data subject, you need to inform them before any other person informs them. We see the top breaches from schools are like, there are some documents, like say I left school in 2002 and some documents still show my personal data and there's someone who can get access to that data. That is why you are saying if you anonymize that data to 004, that one, any data that was there, you'll not be able to know it was, you'll not know to be able to know the data subject. So physical files sometimes are left everywhere, maybe for students, for staff. That is a breach. When cabinets are left unlocked, the files are left on the desk and any person can come and peruse. Cleaners will come and peruse the data and will know this staff is paid this much, or will know this student suffers from a specific health issue. You sending a letter or report to the wrong person. Maybe you wanted to send a letter to me about information regarding my daughter, and when you send, you mistakenly maybe confuse one name and then you send it to the wrong party, another parent or a stranger completely who is not even a parent in that school. That is a kind of breach that schools that can occur in schools. You send email about a child even to the recipients, and also sending emails to a group of parents. That one I was able to explain. You send information, but on the CC you have put emails of every other parent. Instead of BCC, you have done a CC. So I can be able to get that information for other parents, although also I'm a parent in that school, but I can also be able to see information of other parents. That is a data breach. As you are saying, data now breach, how do you manage breaches? You need to notify the data subject, and you need to notify as the data subject and the office within the 72 hours. And also you need to investigate how did this happen, so that you can be able to remediate. Remediate is the third one. You need to notify, first you notify the relevant parties, the ODPC and the data subject, and then you investigate how this data was breached. And then after you find out, you are able to remediate or bring a remedy to what has happened will not happen again. And then you document. You need to ensure that you document what happened so that it does not happen again. Another person coming in as a data protection officer will be able to know these are the kind of breaches that have happened in this school so far. And for them to prevent them in future, this is what was done and this is how we are dealing with it. So it needs to be documented, because the Office of the Data Commissioner can come anytime to audit, and at least we'll need this documentation. We have had these breaches and we've been able to document them this way. So what are the core documents for schools? The schools gather data, and in the data gathering, you inform you inform people of the reason of your legal basis of having this data. How are you securing your data? Do an audit to know that your data is secure. What are your processing time limits? How long can you keep this data? How long can you process it in your systems? And what are the procedures that you have in place? For all these documents that you collect, you give privacy notices to staff, there are consent forms, and there is a data protection policy. there is a recording of all processing activities of what the school does. There is a retention. How do you retain your data? And how do you manage? How do you manage your breach? We'll go to the questions. Betty, I think I am from there. The next level is how we can assist each other, but I would request Betty to come back and tell me whether there are any questions in the Q&A.
Hi, Agnes. We don't have any questions so far.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do this in series? The next stage, because it's already 11, so probably can we have maybe continuation?
That's okay.
Thursday. That's okay. Yeah. So for now, maybe we can allow also some of our school directors to ask questions. If you have a question, you can always raise your hand and we'll give you a chance to ask a question. Anyone with a question, or even you can just type it on our chat box or on our Q&A. Do you have any question? Okay, yeah, we have one in our Q&A. Miriam Joka is asking, sorry, I was late. As a school, are we required to go and register?
Thank you, Betty. Yes, as a school, depending on the number of students and their categories, I think probably in our next webinar we'll be able to go much into details. There are different categories and different amounts, but yes, you're required to register.
Yes, Miriam, you're required to register, and that one, of course, we'll have extensive discussion around it now in our next session of the webinar. Thank you so much, Miriam. Any other question from our attendees? Or you can just raise your hand. Dedan Ochuka is asking, I joined late, please, and the session has been good. Kindly organize one again, please. That is from Dedan Ochuka. Yes, Dedan, you can always organize for another one. What we can do, we'll just finish on this series, completion of the same, and probably we'll also invite Agnes again to just take us through the this webinar on data protection again. Thank you so much. That we appreciate the fact that you're also making an impact to you as a school owner. Agnes, we also have another question. Francis Goloba is asking, displaying of results on notice board, does it amount to the breach of data?
Apparently, that would be categorized as breach.
Mm-hmm.
That would be categorized as breach. Because not, do you have consent from parents to display that data of their students? We had a case maybe years before the DPA, where a student was, you went to go view your KCSE results, and another student went to tell the other student, unajua umepata 350 something. And then the student was so excited and told everyone, but when she went to check the results for herself, alikuwa na 2 something. And it was so damaging emotionally to her because she already had told everyone else her marks. And you know the way relatives always are calling to know, how did you perform? Now going to them and telling them that, no, this is how I performed. I had mistaken. I got a D instead of a B or a... So with the current the current DPA, you'd categorize that as data, unless you have consent from parents that when you're calling for these class 8 meetings or prayer days, you will let them know. We will be displaying all the results of your students once they come on the notice board. If you do not want the results of your students to be displayed, there's a reduction. There is a way you can block an information of a specific student so others will not be able to know. So that would be termed as breach.
Okay, so Francis, I hope your question has been answered. So just take necessary precautions, of course, so that it also don't become a detrimental to your school. Any other question? You can also on live, you can just on our chat box and we'll pick it up from there. Agnes, our advocate Agnes Kionga has also displayed her contacts on the screen, her email address, and also her personal contacts, and even the NKM advocates contacts, just in case you need any consultancy in line with data protection or any legal advisory that might be of importance to your school. She's always available. Also, if you're also not able to reach her directly, you can also reach us as Ed Partners directly through your relationship manager. You can also reach me, your social impact manager, also through your RM, or I can send my I can display my number and also my email address on the same. And one thing you have to understand that data protection is becoming very critical in this country. That one is, we can't debate about it. So we need to take the necessary precautions as school owners so that we also protect our brand. That's one, protect the minors, or rather matters to do with child protection, that too. And lastly, also protect our relationship with our stakeholders who are the parents of the minors, so that we can also move forward as a school and grow as a school, as a brand, knowing that we have complied to all matters legal in terms of data protection. So let's be cautious as school owners. That's one. Secondly, also put everything in place that will ensure you're protecting your brand and you're also protecting the rights of the minor. Over and above, also, if you need any assistance as Ed Partners Africa, we also offer advisory services. Do not hesitate to contact us or even contact Agnes, our advocate, directly. Also, take note of the fact that the fines are very high. To the tunes of around 5 million. That is so much for a school, especially SMEs. And with this kind of economy and even what is going on in this country in terms of economy, you cannot allow yourself to compromise on such as a school owner, and even to compromise your brand on such matters. And over and above, as Ed Partners, we are always here to support you in any way in line with impacting your school in terms of financial. That's one. That is, of course, through our products, loan products and services. And two, in regards to any advisory, be it legal, be it in line with how to get your MOEST, or the necessary documentation that will ensure that your school is compliant to what is required by the Ministry of Education, in line with also child protection, and also in line with matters legal. So in the interest of time, I'm seeing you don't have any other question. I want to take this opportunity to appreciate Agnes for just allowing yourself to be part of this webinar and to also take us through the data protection. And we'll have a series B or a series 2 on the same this coming Thursday, so that we now go deeper or dive deeper on how we can ensure that our school is compliant to the same. Without any further ado, I want to wish you a happy holiday. It's going to be a long holiday. That's one. And I also want to appreciate you for joining the webinar. The same has been recorded. We'll have it on our social media pages. Please share with other school directors so that they also are aware that this is something that is very critical. Share with also people around the education community, not necessarily school directors. You can share with teachers and anyone who is supporting education or promoting quality education. And lastly, I want to let you know that at Ed Partners, we are always here for you to transform generation and to promote quality education. And until next time, it's a goodbye from Ed Partners Africa and NKM Advocates. Thank you so much.